So, Berto, when I first started this podcast 13 years ago, I imagined that you and I would share all the tasks involved in the podcast. When I would come up with topics, you would come up with topics, I would get people to interview, you would get people to interview, all the various things.
But you vastly underestimated my laziness.
And soon realized that I had to do everything, and you showed up, which is great. You're a very good... in basketball commentary terms, you're a good color man.
That's right.
And or color commentary, right? And you're the best when it comes to that. But you've never prepared your own topic until today, which you have coined a Bertopic. It is a portmanteau of Berto and topic. So what are we talking about today, Berto?
Which, by the way, is going to be confusing if I start posting on Instagram and I post Berto pics, because they're spelled the same way.
That's right.
All right, so today we're talking about growing up with music in general, but my specific experience, I think your specific experience, was one where we grew up with radio, and we had our top 40 every week, and then we also grew up with MTV and videos, and a lot of our experiences were soundtracked by that music that was playing on the radio and those videos that we were watching on MTV. It was so embedded into the culture, and we probably, I know that you've talked about it, we have memories that were attached to what was happening that week in music. And I got curious about it because it was potentially a first in human history, like a confluence of things that hadn't happened before and may not happen again. So it's pretty fascinating.
What do you mean?
In that, okay, so certainly before recorded music, you didn't have a device that you could just like turn on and there was music playing. So for you to listen to music, you either had to sing it yourself or someone in your household, or you'd have to travel somewhere where some group was playing. And the further back you go, the harder that would have been to come by, right? And so certainly music was something that humans have had for as long as we know. We have records of primitive instruments and things like that. But it was a very different thing. And then with the advent of recorded music, all of a sudden people could like turn on the radio and listen. And then more and more it became a normalized thing, and it became part of everyone's everyday life. And then people would start talking about it.
Yeah.
Then as we got into the internet age, it flipped onto, well, now I can just kind of download anything at any time.
Yeah.
And nowadays music is everywhere. And maybe it's more there than ever before. But the key difference is that since you can get anything you want at any time of any kind, it's harder to say, no, like, well, are we all on the same page? Are we listening to the same top 40? Are we watching the same videos?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that till you just said that it's possible that we grew up in the pinnacle of the radio, especially geared towards teenagers, because there were radio stations, obviously, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but I don't know if they were so targeted to 13-year-olds the way that K Plus was in Seattle in 1984, for example. Or at the very least, we can say we are part of a 3 or 4 decade generation of people that might have had experienced something that had never been experienced before and will never be experienced again.
That's right.
Because presumably if we always have, better and faster ways of communicating, you won't need to just tune in to a radio station and listen to your favorite music.
So let me ask you, you grew up in, late 70s and through the 80s, early 90s. And what do you feel was your experience with music in the sense of like your relationship to radio and your relationship to the songs that were coming out week to week?
Well, I don't know if I've ever thought about it until we started talking about this topic earlier, that, I wouldn't call myself like a radio person, right? Mm-hmm. Like I grew up on the radio. But when I think about it, I really did. Mm-hmm. All of my music because back in the day, for you youngins out there, cassettes and records, and particularly when CDs came out, they're expensive.
Yeah.
And expensive by today's standards. I mean, CDs when they first came out were something like $17 or something. And this is at a time in, the late 80s, early 90s where, you'd be working a full-time job, minimum wage for like $3.50.
Right.
And you take home like $2.50. So if you think about how much you would have to work to buy just one CD, that's like, what is that, like 2 days of work or something? What is that? It's like...
yeah, because like you also need other things with that money.
Right. And so it was really a big deal. I remember I felt so spoiled when my parents every Christmas would buy me 4 records.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Like 4 records, whatever I wanted.
That's insane.
Like 4 albums.
Yeah.
And maybe the rest of the year I'd get 3 other records.
Right. So you would more than, like you get 3 the whole year and then 4 in one instance.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, because I'm slightly narcissistic, I would dominate the record player.
Right.
During Christmas, I would
be the DJ.
Yeah. There's actually a videotape of that, because my dad would just prop up the video camera and I kept wanting to play, I think, an REM album or something, or maybe it was The Cure. It was, their double album.
Okay.
Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. Is that the name of it? Anyway, I was being a jerk because I was 13. But yeah, so definitely grew up with the radio. And as a kid in the 70s, there was this radio station in Seattle called KJR. It was on it was on AM, and it played hits that our whole family could enjoy.
Right.
Like all the greats, like Beatles, Beach Boys, Commodores, Sister Sledge, Bee Gees, John Denver, Carpenters, Elton John, of course, Paul, John, Stevie Wonder, Fleetwood Mac, Jackson 5, Doobie Brothers. I remember all those bands. And when I hear those bands, I kind of think about being in the van and listening to KJR. And then, of course, in the 80s, we had K+, which was dedicated to teenagers. Or it might have... And then there was another... Anyway, I won't bore with the details of Seattle radio, but for me, up until I was 13, music was just sort of background stuff.
Okay.
I really loved the Muppet movie soundtrack when I was...
Oh, really?
When I was 9, when I was 9 years old, and I would, and I would listen to music, but, and I remember listening to Rush and AC/DC and Journey when I was 10, but it wasn't like a major part of my identity. It was just something I liked to listen to. But then I go, and I've told this story before on the podcast before, I go to a dance in 7th grade. And it's my first nighttime dance with all the kids, and there's the 9th graders and the 8th graders, and I'm nervous, and I've never danced before, and I show up, and I'm dancing, and I'm really nervous, and I'm looking around, and everyone is, all the other 7th graders are sort of clumped together, and then all of a sudden, everyone jumps up in the air and yells, "Jump."
Wow.
The entire cafeteria, totally synced up. Except for me, seemingly.
Except for you.
Seemingly. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Like, I must have missed something. I'll pay attention. Anyway, I'm listening, but dancing. All of a sudden, boom, everyone jumps up in the air and says, "Jump." And I'm thinking, what is happening right now? And then I really listened to the song, and it was a song that said "Jump" in the chorus.
That's hilarious.
It was by Van Halen, of course. Of course, the less older people are thinking of like...
Pointer Sisters.
Yeah, didn't the Pointer Sisters do?
Yeah.
Jump
for my love.
Right, but then
jump it.
I guess every generation has their own jump, because then there was...
Jump.
Yeah,
Isn't
by
that
Criss Cross.
No, Cypress. Oh, right.
But then there was, there was
Cypress Hill.
No,
right?
not Cypress Hill. It's the white guys, the Irish guys.
Oh, right.
Anyway, that group. But anyway, so I felt
jump around, jump up, and get down.
And I felt like I was completely, at a time when you really want to fit in,
right.
I felt completely out of the loop, and immediately went home and just started going through the radio station, like figuring out what radio station are they listening to, because all the people in this room cannot possibly have 1984 by Van Halen.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right,
because where did they get access to it? So I'm flipping through the channels, and I find K+, and I'm saying, this must be our channel.
Nice.
And I proceeded, like, a weird, creepy person studying culture proceeded to listen to this.
What is this culture?
Yeah, I just listened to this station
That's
over and
hilarious.
over and over again. And within maybe a month, I too had memorized every
Right.
lyric of every song from 1984.
That's hilarious. Well, I mean, that matches not the exact scenario, but I had a similar experience in that, well, for me, you were saying that you could get, some records throughout the year. I had less access to that. I had a very, very small record collection. My very first record ever was purchased for me by my aunt, Tia Alicia.
How old are you?
I was, I was 3.5, almost, 3.5, I think, almost 4. But I remember distinctly going to the little music store with her because she was leaving from Colombia to move to the States. So it was her going away gift. And we walk into the record store and she goes, okay, you can pick out any record. But she said it in Spanish, which was odd because we... And so I walked around and I found this awesome looking record with 2 women and 2 dudes on the cover.
ABBA.
ABBA!
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh,
Because I was
yes.
thinking for a 3-year-old, what in the world would they choose?
No, but I was already into music at that age. I loved the Carpenters. I loved John Denver. I loved the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family. Anyway, so I picked ABBA, and that was like my first record.
I was born when not Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family. You're thinking Partridge Family. Is that what you said?
Both Brady Bunch and Partridge Family.
The Brady Bunch had their own music?
They had a couple songs in there.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, related, similar
The
show, Partridge
the
Family.
whole show was them being musicians. Yeah.
I was born when their song was number 1. I
Nice.
think I love you.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, so then what happened is, since I didn't have access
it's actually
to,
kind of a terrible song.
since I didn't have access to a lot of records or anything, radio was it.
Yeah.
And in
So
Colombia,
what was it like in Colombia?
right, in Colombia we got top 40. We got Casey Kasem over there, and
But
before,
that would have been a lot.
before Casey
older.
Kasem, we just got an American feed. I don't know exactly what they were pulling, but they were
Was it one station?
Ringo songs. There was at first one main station I listened to, and then there was a second station, and then those were the 2. And one of them was kind of younger and hipper, and the other one was a little kind of darker,
Huh.
But the younger and hipper one had the voices. They had a dude with a lower voice and a girl with a high voice, but there was all the computer change, or not computer, but I guess computer. They would change their pitch.
So I don't know if this is your experience, but I'm now reminded of the ubiquity of radio in the car.
Oh yeah.
That everyone, when you got in the car, had just their radio station that was, permanently on. And I can remember being in my aunt and uncle's car, and they listened to FM radio, which was like
Right.
adult radio with stuff like Steely Dan and stuff. And I remember just being kind of scared of FM radio.
Yeah.
AM radio was KJR, it was the Beatles and the Beach
That's
Boys
right.
and Elton John, and I understood that kind of stuff. But FM, it felt dangerous. And because I think back then FM was kind of new, because I think it took more energy, FM, and it's stereo. FM, you could do stereo. And
That's
a lot
right.
of car stereo started having left and right signals. And the only movie that I've seen this depicted well in is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Where whenever the Brad Pitt character gets in the car, there's this radio station that's always on. And that feeling of you're connected to this live broadcast and this DJ is in your town,
Yep.
knows what's going on.
You could dial in. You could win prizes.
Yeah, it felt like this community hall feeling.
That was definitely the case. So there was one that was 88.9, and that was the original one. And they played all gringo music,
What'd you call me?
And then when bands in...
Wait, isn't punto a bad word?
Punto, no. That's a dot.
Oh.
88.9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But there is a similar word that I won't say because puta is a bad word. But anyways, 88.9, that was the original. And they played mostly
What'd you
gringo
call me?
music. But they also played Latin rock when it started coming out. And then the new station was called 102.9, and that was La Super
What was
Estación.
Latin rock like?
So actually, it was very gringo influence, very Brit rock and American music,
Like Led Zeppelin,
US music. It wasn't too prog rocky. It
like,
was
or Bad Company kind of thing.
No, it was actually more alternative.
Oh,
If you listen to a lot of those bands, you would have
what year
only
what
listened
year are
to
we
them,
talking about?
Mid to late 80s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're not talking 70s then.
No, there was, but I didn't know it at that time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as popular. And actually, at that point, they were way more, I'd say like Queen, like that kind of band.
Okay.
Some really amazing music. And also very, a lot of poetic guitar singer-songwriter music, of course. But later, it was like they could have been at home with New Order and Depeche Mode.
Of course, because that's the Colombian ideal.
No, 70s. You know, like there's tons of singer-songwriter in the
like
70s.
Bread and...
Yeah, and so that same thing in Latin America. But I'm saying that in the mid to late 80s, if you were going to group them together, it would be with the new wave techno kind of bands, even though...
What was that like to be in Bogota listening to American music? So
that's all I knew. And since I spent 2 years in New York when I was 5, I also like had cemented, like that's what I liked. And I have these distinct memories. We'll go about like our best memories in a minute, but here's a tough or bluff for you.
Oh.
The top 40, not American top 40, just like the concept of the top 40, was invented or was first released in the early 1930s. Top 40 was first invented and released into the airwaves in the early 1930s.
Oh, and on the airwaves.
Yeah.
30s. Well, radio does go back a long ways. Top 40 is such a modern feeling concept. And were there even 40 songs in the 30s? I mean, I'm joking, but I'm going to say bluff. I'm thinking more like 50s.
Very good. Very good. It was early 50s.
Okay.
There was a dude named Todd Stortz who is credited in Omaha, Nebraska with being the first radio jockey to invent the concept of the top 40. And then the thing that in doing the research that was fascinating is TV. So radio was the main thing that people would listen to. Everyone would gather. Did your family have one of those big stand-up radios?
No.
Okay. In my grandpa's house, there was one of those huge stand-up radios, and people would actually sit on the couch.
Like that was from the 30s?
Yeah, that looked like a TV, you know?
Yeah.
And people would just look at the radio while they listened to the radio,
Yeah.
which is funny. And radio, as you can probably remember or know, it used to be the main attraction, and there were serials and all these things. Well, when TV came out, it started supplanting.
Right.
And radio stations were like, what do? We can't, we have these serials, but people want to see the pictures. So the concept of the top 40 was, well, what if we like make it kind of an audio spectacle? We'll have kind of recurring gags, kind of characters, and the music will be very hand-picked. This dude, the guy that's credited with inventing it, used to go to bars all the time. I don't know why. Maybe he was, a little depressed.
Well, what else is there to do in, was it Kansas?
In Nebraska.
Nebraska.
But he noticed that the jukeboxes, people were always selecting the same set of songs all the time, even though there were a lot more choices. Right?
So his top 40 was from that one bar?
Yeah, essentially. So his theory was, I bet you people would be fine if the music selection was really limited to the best, and how, and so he started looking at like from various publications what were the top songs, and then he would just play 40 because that's how many could fit in the time frame they could do. There were obviously way more than that.
Well, is the implication before this movement that DJs would just play
what they wanted
to,
yeah.
And it would be kind of all over the board? Yes. Because they might not want to listen to the same song over and over again.
And and there were segmented stations for different kinds of music and things like this.
Right.
With the top 40, they would play whatever was popular, whether it was country, rock, jazz, whatever, right? And so that's how it happened. And then what started happening with that is stations across the country picked up on this, and they started their own top 40s. And then eventually...
Like Billboard gets involved and stuff.
Yeah, like all that's it kind of started developing into like more official. So here's another tough or bluff. Actually, first a little bit of trivia, but maybe I'll do it as a tougher bluff. So do you know, I can't be a tougher bluff.
You just asked me a question.
Just a question. Do you know why FM was better than AM?
Well, because it was stereo.
Yeah, but what before they started doing stereo, why was FM perceived to be better?
Perceived to be better or actually better?
Both, I guess.
I think, well, it's a different part of the radiation spectrum, and I think the signal is stronger when you're closer. Something like that.
It's close. So what happens is AM means amplitude modulation. So they literally modulated the volume of these waves, these radio waves. Now, radio waves, you and I can't hear them because they're too low in frequency, but there's still a volume.
Essentially, they broadcast the waveform.
Exactly. And what they would change was the volume, like how much power, right? And that actually works really well for long distances, and it's cheap to do. But there's a catch. As soon as it goes through the air, there are random fluctuations in that power amount. And so you get a lot of static, a lot of noise.
Right.
With FM was frequency modulation. So instead of modulating the amplitude of the wave, they modulated how fast the wave was vibrating, the frequency. And they kept the amplitude static, or it didn't matter if the amplitude changed a little bit because they weren't tracking that. So FM isn't as good as at very long distances, and it does get blocked by like walls and things like that. But the flip side is there was much better sound quality,
right?
Because there wasn't all that static.
Wow, that's amazing that I pulled that out of my butt. It's essentially what I said, which I'm like surprised that, because I probably learned that in the 70s back when it mattered. Because as soon as FM in the mid 80s became dominant, it was almost like AM just completely dropped off the face of the earth and was only for like random news stations.
You don't want to listen to music in that form.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, so here's another tougher bluff. So how many American top 40 DJs have there been? One.
What? How many
American top 40, American top 40 radio DJs have there been?
Including the one you just mentioned in the beginning?
No, that was an American top 40. That was just some random Nebraska top 40. American top 40 is branded, and it's very specific.
Oh. Is this
American
Casey Kasem?
top 40? That's one of them, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I guess
so how many
have there been? And it's not a tough bluff. It's just like
I don't know because I didn't listen to Casey Kasem. We had Rick Dees in Seattle, which I think was the younger, goofier version of Casey Kasem. So, I mean, Casey Kasem lived a long time, if not still alive.
No, he died tragically, actually.
How did he die?
He went missing or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
I need to look that up.
There's some foul play involved.
Oops, goddamn. Casey Kasem.
Yeah.
Kasem.
Foul play.
I almost spelled it right.
I think his ex-wife or something like that.
Illness and death.
Oh, illness.
Announced her father Parkinson, diagnosed over a few months later. She said, did Kasem health worsen 2013? His wife, Jean, prevented any contact with him.
Oh, that's what it was. Right. The kids really wanted to see their dad, and the wife didn't allow it.
Yeah. So it wasn't like she killed him.
No.
But so Kasem did it for a long time, from what I understand. And American Top 40 probably started well before he did. So it's probably like a Jay Leno, Johnny Carson thing. And there's a guy before Johnny Carson. So I'm going to say like 4.
Oh, that's pretty good. And in fact, it might be, but there's 3 official ones.
Okay.
Casey Kasem, but I grew up with Casey Kasem. That was my weekly jam. I knew all his little stories he told.
What day was it on?
Saturdays when I would listen to it. Okay. I don't know if that was...
I think Rick Dees was Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken.
So Rick Dees was technically not American Top 40.
Right.
What happened was the KIIS station in LA, they couldn't get the rights to the American Top 40 because they lost the rights to some other station. So they invented their own with this guy, Rick Dees. But he was pretty entertaining too. So that one, it sounds like it got picked up here too.
In Seattle, yeah.
Okay, so Casey Kasem, the voice of Shaggy, great, just all around dude.
Yeah, I forgot. Shaggy.
He would tell these amazing like stories to go along with the songs. Like he'd give you a little bit of the bio of the artist and a lot of tragic stories behind the music. They were always little jingles with different numbers, like number 10, like little sound clips. And then people...
Yeah, that was another part of this for Rick Dees as well, that it was basically the only venue of information I had on these artists.
Right. Yeah, because you can look it up on Wikipedia.
Right. And it wasn't like I was going to buy trade magazines on music, musicians. And I didn't know anyone who knew any of this information. And MTV back then was basically just videos.
That's right.
Occasionally they would dip into an interview, but it wasn't like it was a common experience. So
the 120 minutes was awesome.
Right, but that was later. That was late 80s. Yeah. And I remember learning little details and really latching on to what Rick Dees would deem to share with everybody.
About the artist. Yeah, same with Casey Kasem. And so I would know all that stuff. He did it till 88. At that point, a dude named Shadow Stevens, do you remember that name? That name actually, when I heard it, I was like, oh, I remember that name. Probably because I was still listening to American Top 40 when he took over. And then Ryan Seacrest is the current host.
Oh, he's what?
Ryan Seacrest.
What doesn't that guy do?
I know, right? He hosts the American Top 40.
He must go in and record just the interstitials.
I don't know, but yeah.
There's no way he sits there for 4 hours because he the amount of things that guy does.
Yeah, no, you're right. He can't be the DJ, right?
Right. He just sits there and records little bits in between. He probably does it in like 13 minutes.
That's right. Okay, so here is the sad part. Can you guess any of the, I'm not going to go top 40, any of the top 10 songs this week in the American Top 40?
Well, okay.
Just a single one. Just give me one.
A single song?
Or even an artist. Guess one artist.
Is Lorde up there?
No. And well, not in the top 10. Maybe later.
Lil Nas X?
Yes. How did you know?
I don't know. He's just big right now.
Okay, that's one. Can you guess any others?
Is Ed Sheeran? He just had an album come out.
Not in the top 10.
Well, his album comes out like soon or something.
But there are several known names.
Cardi B.
Not in
Taylor Swift.
No. I'll give you a hint. This kid is no longer a kid, but he got his fame in a group, in a ensemble.
Oh, I don't know.
He's also been in movies, and he does voices for cartoon characters in movies.
No idea.
Justin Bieber.
Oh. That's your... Wait, what was your hint for Justin Bieber?
Oh, shoot. No, I messed up. I'm so dumb. I was thinking Timberlake. My bad.
I'm like, Justin Bieber...
YouTube star. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So I was kind of excited because I thought, ooh, Justin Timberlake. But then now I realized it's Justin Bieber.
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised.
Ariana Grande is on there.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, it's funny that I know these people.
Do you know single song that's popular right now?
Well, the Bieber song is, I've heard it. I don't know the name of it, but
Peaches.
Yeah, it's actually exactly.
Okay, so number one is Levitating by Dua Lipa.
Okay, Dua Lipa.
I listened to all these as prep. Yeah. I don't like any of them.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I haven't been a fan of top 40. There was 1.5 years when I was a fan of top 40. It was when I was 13 and 14. As soon, right after I turned 15, I instantly top 40 instantly soured. It's so weird. Like the top 100 songs of 1985. Every single song is, to me, a gem. But it's just I was 14. You fast forward to 1986, and like maybe 10 out of the top 100 songs I enjoy. And so two things are working against us with the top 10 list right now. Is one,
our age.
That's the biggest one, of course. And maybe the sort of music we listen to, right? There are people our age who listen to the certain radio stations that have this kind of stuff on it, I suppose. But the other thing is that the stars of today, I just feel like aren't really as big as they were when we were kids. Or maybe it's just because we're old as well. I don't know.
Could be.
Because we had, Michael Jackson and Madonna and...
I mean, some of these names are pretty, but...
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty, yeah. I mean, I'm actually surprised that I recognize any of the artists.
Right.
From the
and
top
you would
10.
actually you'd be slightly more in the know than I would, because I've caught several times in the last 10 years where you knew a bit more about currently popular songs.
So I got to get this off my chest. Top 40 music these days. And it's been a problem for a while.
Great, because this is our gripes of wrath about music these days.
Yeah. let me give a gripe, which is, and this is absolutely an old guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Get off my music lawn.
Yeah, this is 100%. When I was young, I remember old people, like I remember when grunge came out, and I wasn't so much into Nirvana as much as I was into like Soundgarden and Mudhoney and Screaming Trees and these kinds of bands. And I remember we were jamming out at this bar, the Monkey actually, on Roosevelt, and all of us 22-year-old kids are, listening to music and really enjoying it. And this guy, Ian, who was actually, do you remember those commercials with the money tree and there's these caterpillars?
Yes.
He was one of the caterpillars. Yeah. So Ian, he was always at that bar.
Those always freaked me out.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. And he was older. He was like 30. And I just remember he had just had this sourpuss on his face, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, this is all just recycled music from the 70s.
No.
And so even him at 30 was looking at top 40 from my time and saying, get off my music lawn. Yeah. So now that I'm 50, I can't imagine how terrible this is going to sound. But similar to grunge, when grunge came out, so when in the 80s, things became fairly plastic very quick, especially at the end.
Yeah.
You had bands like Bon Jovi and Poison and Vixen and Motley Crue that were supposed to be hard rock, which were not hard rock.
Very hard, dark death metal.
This was extremely bubblegum pop.
Very pop.
Packaged in massive amounts of hairspray and corporate think and how you're going to sell to the kids. And it was really deplorable, and I hated it, obviously, because by that point I'm 17, 18 years old and was, too much of a hipster for top 40. But then grunge comes out, and its whole ethic was screw you. We don't care about hairspray. We don't care about how we look. We don't care about our clothes. We don't care about what you think of us. And we're just going to make music the way we like it. It's all going to be real down to earth, no effects, very in your face, and just take it or leave it, or go to hell. And a lot of music like Tad and Mudhoney even were bands that just actively said, we do not want to be top 40. Like, please do not make us top 40. It's like the opposite of what we want. Pearl Jam kind of had an element of that eventually as well. And so I feel like today we need another movement like that.
Another grunge, a new
grunge. And again, this is an old guy thing to say, but I feel like top 40 or popular music today is so plastic.
Yeah.
There's some good music out there. What's her name? Is it Bridgers? Phoebe Bridgers? There's some other... Lord actually is pretty good as well, I think.
Well, but what I can't tell, and this could just be because when you're inside, you can't tell that you're inside. The songs that were even one-hit wonders and what you would call sappy and romantic from the 80s, I still find them memorable, and like those melodies don't leave my mind. And so is that just because my age and where I was?
Yeah, so yes, it is age. I'm quite sure 13-year-olds today, 18-year-olds today are listening to top 40 music, and they're like, this is a beautiful song. And they'll
remember it?
And they will remember it, yeah. And that maybe we'll take a break. I'll get back to the science behind why that is. I mean, what's the chance, Berto, that 1985 is empirically a better year of music than any other year, according to me?
It's really good. It's the good chance, man.
No, it's not. There's zero chance. And but I do think that in the ebbs and flows of the plasticity of music, that we definitely need another alternative punch in the face because of what seems to me to be extremely generic plastic top 40 music these days. But then the other thing I wonder is like, well, is top 40 just always supposed to be plastic because it has to appeal literally to the most people?
Yeah.
But I find, people that I respect in terms of their musical tastes will really love top 40 today. And I'm just thinking, why? Like, it's so formulaic. I mean, the one thing I will say about pop music today, it is produced extremely
to the nines.
But it's good stuff. Like the drum sounds good. The bass lines can be pretty nice sometimes. The harmonies can actually be pretty good. But there's nothing new about it. It just, the melodies are the same. The ethic is the same. The vibe is the same.
It's and again, I it's hard to tell from the inside, but to me, I'm like, rarely a song comes out and I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Well, when was the last time that happened?
I guess, I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, I'd be curious what you think of this new Lorde song. It's a single that just came out. It's called Solar Power. And although the beginning is kind of typical Lorde whisper singing, the ending has this really beautiful, but it's also kind of ripped off. The ending's kind of ripped off from a lot of songs. Actually, people are saying it's ripped off from George Michael, but it's actually, but George Michael ripped it off from other people. So, but again, everyone always rips people off, so it's not a big deal. But I'd be curious what you thought about the ending of this Solar Power song, because it's actually really musical, and I think you might be able to appreciate it.
I just think if you could play 10 songs in the 70s, certainly in the 80s, that were so completely different from one another.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about from esoteric. I'm talking about like pick a Bob Dylan, pick a Beatles, pick a Rolling Stones, and they're fundamentally different. And I'm not even diving into jazz or something.
Right.
Anyways, so before we go to a break, I wanted to ask you about music videos, specifically MTV. What was your experience like with music videos on MTV?
Oh, God. You asked me this before we recorded, and I had a little time to think about it, and I could go on for years about...
we might have to do an episode just about music
you and I are the MTV generation.
Yes.
MTV went on air in 1980, I believe, when I was 9, and really had its heyday throughout the 80s during my music watching and MTV watching days. I would sit, after the K Plus and started listening to Top 40 when I was 13, I was like, oh, there's this thing. Well, the other thing is we didn't get cable for a while. And before that...
So you may not have had your MTV.
Right, and we'll get into the top 5 later because we're going to talk about top 5 videos. But yeah, I mean, Michael Jackson, Duran Duran, Wham, Culture Club, Thompson Twins, New Order, Depeche Mode.
Yeah.
So many different experiences but the thing is to talk about my memories with MTV is basically me just saying, well, that's
your life.
But we had 2 TVs in our house. We had the main TV, and then we had essentially my TV, which was in the basement. And I felt so luxurious having my own, and it was a tiny black and white, I think, like 12-inch television.
I had one of those too, actually.
Yeah, it was just
my grandpa had given me his old black and white TV.
Yeah, and we had that cable box with that slider thing. Do you remember?
Well, I didn't have a cable box. I just had the tuner.
Oh, okay.
I didn't get MTV in Colombia. My grandma Liti, she got MTV because they had cable. So when I would go over there, I would see it.
Right.
And then obviously at my mom's up here.
Right. Yeah. So I just have so many memories. I've memorized, if I were to watch and occasionally I'd do a video from the 80s, I know every single scene.
Right.
I know every, I studied, not because I was studying, but you're
engrossed.
Yeah. It was just, I don't know what to say. It was perfectly made for my brain at the time, just listening to really great music and watching people interpret artistically or just perform or whatever. And I think another part of it because it brought so many things to me.
Mm-hmm.
It brought, the things that Duran Duran did in their videos. They were always in this luxurious European locale.
Yeah. And it looked like a James Bond movie or something.
Yeah. And they had beautiful women around them, and their outfits were great, and their hair was great, and they moved great, and their art on the wall was great. And so that kind of vibe. And then you have Bruce Springsteen or John Cougar Mellencamp, where you have this Rust Belt culture.
Folksy.
Yeah, of this, small pink houses, Americana. And I didn't have any experience with that, in Seattle. Or you have someone like Michael Jackson, who is in another world. Madonna is another world. And I had no context for anything I was seeing.
So it's a lot of little windows into the different...
But like windows that I had no context for, Like when I hear Madonna today, I hear a white interpretation of black music in New York at the time. Sure. But at the time, all I heard was just this music, and I had no idea what I was witnessing. Or when Duran Duran is in their outfits, it all just became the artist. I couldn't differentiate between it. In the same way that I would see John Cougar Mellencamp on a motorcycle in like Ohio. That felt just as exotic and strange as Duran Duran on a sailboat in the music video Rio.
Right.
Like it all just felt far away and inaccessible to me in my suburban life.
Well, and then imagine, because in Bogota, like it felt even weirder too, because I had the glimpse of living up here, so I kind of understood a little bit of U.S. culture, just from New York anyways. But living over there in Bogota, anytime I'd see a video, it was definitely a window into a different universe, Everything was outside of my reality. It was glamorous. It was like weird and different. If I looked outside my window, the only references to what I was seeing is the clothing that all the kids my age had been starting to wear, because they were imitating those things. And a thing that was true about the radio, definitely true about MTV, is it was the thing you could all talk about and have a common connection to.
Right.
It wasn't as loaded as movies in a way, because movies, first of all, you had to go watch the movie in the theater mostly, because it was not easy for us to get. Like, I didn't even have a VHS.
And the typical human saw each movie once.
Yeah, and like I only probably saw a movie once a year at that age,
Really?
Yeah, because we didn't go to the theater.
But did they have movies on TV?
Yes, of course. So I saw TV and movies. So we could talk about TV shows, absolutely. And but even then, even though there was no Netflix and stuff, TV shows, you might not see all the same TV shows, but you'd have a few in common.
Right.
But videos. And the other thing about videos is, unlike, if you think about today, there are still videos. And people might say, oh, did you see the Peaches video on YouTube, right? But when you were watching MTV, even if you only watched like an hour, maybe 2 hours, how many videos did you see? And all those videos are videos you would discuss. And so there was a lot of content there to talk about and have in common. So that was pretty cool. And so like my bus ride, every morning, bus ride would be an hour bus ride to school. And me and this friend, Maria Andrea, we would geek out on music and all the videos we'd see and all the things.
Well, so I had a girl that is similar, and I can't remember her name. If I thought about it long enough, it might be anyway. And we would geek out, but we were 15, and by then I was completely beyond top 40. In fact, I'm wearing a shirt of and I just realized that my zipper is down for some reason. And I would listen to Black Celebration, and I think she might have even borrowed this to me. I'm not sure, lent it to me. But we would talk about how crappy top 40 was the whole time.
Right. But videos, you would probably talk about videos.
That too, but did you ever go through a phase where you were anti-top 40?
Only when grunge started. Because, and not because of grunge. What happened is, by then I was up here, and I remember actually one of the I won't spoil this one, but anyways, part of the thing that happened was that the top 40 started changing and started becoming a lot more about, well, there was a lot of R&B and a lot of hip hop and a lot of things, but for me, the music I was into started not being in the top 40.
Right.
And so then I just moved. All right, so just really quick facts, and then we'll go to break. So MTV was actually started on Saturday, the 1st of August, 1981.
81.
Which is, they started at 12:01 a.m. Eastern time. Who was watching?
Yeah.
And you know, it was
video killed a radio star.
Yeah, it was the first. It was started by a dude. It was the brainchild was this dude named Robert Pittman, and he actually came up with the idea because he had done something similar, a small little test program in the 70s, late 70s in New York. There was also a precursor TV series that gave them some of the ideas called Pop Clips by Michael Nesmith. Do you know who Michael?
From the Monkees.
Ex-Monkees, yeah. And then there's tons of video stuff going back all the way to the 1800s. Of what I was able to find, there was a song called "Little Lost Child." That's a kind of a crappy little guitar song back in the 1894s that became a hit, meaning people were buying the sheet music all over the place. That was what a hit was back then. But the person that did it did a thing where they projected images while someone played the song. So it was kind of like the first live music video that we have on record. I'm sure there were things like that elsewhere, but that. And then Warner Brothers did a set of things in the 1920s that eventually became silly symphonies, but it was like a lot of cartoons and other images set to music. Tony Bennett believes he was the first official video in 1955. He did a song called "Stranger in Paradise," and they like filmed the thing. So he likes to credit himself with being the first music video. And then the Moody Blues in 1964 did a video for "Go Now." I don't remember that song, but
Go now.
Oh yeah,
you better go now.
Yeah, and I loved the Moody Blues actually, and I didn't realize they beat the Beatles by like a year basically.
Yeah, it's funny because some people will say the Beatles invented the music video because they didn't want to tour anymore.
Right.
And so they would send out these, music videos as a substitute of touring.
Yeah, Paperback Writer, Strawberry Fields. So they came right on the heels of that. I mean, they obviously were pioneers because they did so many visuals and things. They did Hard Day's Night, like they did full music movies in a way.
Right, but Elvis had done that before.
And Elvis had done that, sure. And then Bob Dylan had this thing in 1965. Have you seen it where he's moving the placards?
Yeah.
It's called Subterranean Homesick Blues. And then, of course, the first one you mentioned, it, Video Killed the Radio Star, was the official first MTV video.
All right, let's take a break and we get back more Birdo picks. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. Let's do some patron shout-outs. What do you say, Birdo?
Let's do it.
So these people have been patrons all the way since November of 2017. It's a long list of people.
Oh, beep, beep.
Apparently, a lot of people wanted to become patrons in November of 2017, and they became patrons and stayed patrons this whole time. We have David from Illinois.
Yay.
Annette from Norway.
Woo.
Pamela from Brooklyn, New York.
Nice.
Amanda from Edmonds, Washington.
Oh, right around the corner.
I think we've emailed with Amanda. Billy from Ohio.
Oh, Billy.
Nicola from Great Britain.
Tesla.
Annie from London, Great Britain. Good old Natasha, who we have met.
Natasha.
From California.
Nice.
KR from California.
Cool.
Rose from California.
Rose, by any other name.
Liza from who knows where.
Liza from who knows. Do they just not specify? So you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On Patreon, you don't have to say where you're from. Daria from Chicago.
Dun, 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 dun. Daria.
Yeah.
Daria.
Ragna here from God knows where.
Okay.
Phil from Whittier, California.
Oh.
A lot of California people. We
Whittier.
got Jill from Maine. Who is actually a most deserving listener.
Woo!
Whoa. So Jill has been a very high upper tier patron for many years. So thank you.
Holy macanudos.
Yeah. Jill essentially is the equivalent of like dozens of patrons at this point.
Nice.
I will say that Phil is an even more, and I believe that Natasha used to be higher as well. But she doesn't like us anymore, so that's why she downgraded.
Ah.
Just joking. We have Frances from Nottingham, Great Britain. We have Lindsay from New Jersey, and Cheryl from Michigan, and Tamsin from Australia.
Very nice.
So thank you all for becoming patrons and staying patrons all of this time and putting up with all of our BS.
So Kirk, let me ask you.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how like growing up with the music, and I was asking about, is it just me or the songs I remember as a kid seem to have stuck with me? Do we know anything from like research about the relationship with music and the developing young mind?
So it's a hard thing to research because, and I've often thought about this. I remember when I was, in my 20s, I remember thinking, I feel like I'm extremely attached to certain art that I was exposed to when I was a teenager. And I'm always trying to relive that experience. The love that I had for even the Beatles, because I really started listening to the Beatles when I was a young teenager. Or, like REM, for example. I do not like any of the things that they made past like 1989. Everything they made from like 81 until 87 or something, I love. And a lot of bands are like that. Like Devo, I didn't like their later stuff. U2, I didn't really like their later stuff. And I'm just trying to figure out what that is. And even movies that I saw back then, I will really, really love. And I thought the metaphor I had was that in our minds, we have these slots that are available and they're open when we're born or maybe when we turn 13. And as soon as something comes along and fills that slot of like the song that makes you feel X,
right?
Then that song, it now cannot be displaced. It is now completely fused with that feeling of being dumped or the feeling of being in love or the feeling of being angry or the feeling of heading out in the town, like Stepping Out by Joe Jackson. And any other song that comes along that you might like cannot ever amount to the way that one feels. But what does the research say? Well, our brains are developing a lot during our teen years. And we don't often think of that. We think, well, when you're young. But during teenage years, our brains go through a lot of transformation. And one could say that a major theme of the teenage brain is figuring out who you're going to be. You could almost think of it as we evolved to have these different phases where when we're 0 to 5, we evolved to learn how to speak, how to move, how to attach, these kinds of things. From 5 to 13, the latency period, as Freud called it, you could say we evolved to kind of lay low. We're old enough to know how to talk and maybe gather a few berries, but we're not old enough to be on our own. Because, you can imagine 100,000 years ago that 8-year-olds had to stay pretty close to their parents, but independent enough that they could be mobile by themselves. But then you get to be 13, and this is probably about the time when we start, 13 to 15, that we started to actually become adults. 100,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, our species was such that okay, now it's time for you to figure out what you are going to do as a totally independent, top of the pyramid, functioning human in the tribe moving forward. And you could argue that we evolved a spongy brain to absorb what is happening in our tribe, in our society, if you will, to learn the ropes. It's very important that you, at the age that you emerge into adulthood, that you understand the social mores and the values and what is important to everyone and how to do things, because you're going to have to do things on your own. And so your brain is is very open. On the other side, we're still learning impulse control, and we're still learning how to coordinate everything. We haven't fully developed. We don't really fully develop that until we're in our mid-20s. So we're in this zone of time where we're kind of chaotic, and maybe that's a good thing. We're open and we're experimenting and we're developing who we're going to be. Well, that applies more importantly to how are you going to gather wood, what kind of spouse, partner are you looking for, do you like to live on the top of a hill or the bottom of a hill?
Yeah.
Are you the sort of person that likes to gather water as opposed to wood, as opposed to hunting? Like all those things are probably important back in the day.
And you do need the recklessness because, if you've already gained the wisdom and the age, you're not going to go hunting T-Rexes.
Well, and you could say evolutionarily, the tribe would benefit by having an age group of a cohort who is not... rejects the status quo.
Yeah.
It's possible that each, technological advance was pushed forward by young people saying, I don't want to do it that way anymore. And the old people are like, but that's the way that have been locked into my neurons.
Square wheels is the way.
Yeah. And so when art comes along, it also either you could say hacks into that system or is a part of the glory of that system. And as a 13-year-old, you're discovering who you are. And, and I think a lot of people can relate to this of like, am I a rocker? Am I a pop music person? Am I a hip hop person?
Yeah.
What kind of person am I? And music helps us to feel connected to that.
A tribe I'm in.
Yeah, because it's not just that the music sounds good. It's also like, what are these artists? How do they feel like to me? Can I relate to them? Like Tears for Fears, I felt like even though I didn't know the bassist, the lead singer of Everybody Wants the World, I feel like I knew him through the videos. You know what I mean? Anyway, so the idea is that neuronally we're very open during those years from 13, 15. To absorb things, and they become locked in. They become associated with all of those feelings.
Makes sense.
And it kind of matches onto my experience that, I liked music when I was 10, but there were experiences of hearing songs when I was 14 that are like euphoric.
Yeah.
I would just be staring at the speaker, just going, this song is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. But I don't have that feeling anymore. I haven't had that feeling in a long time, really. I mean, occasionally I got it like in my 20s, 30s, 40s with like the Shins or the Strokes or something. MGMT.
Yeah.
I was in my 30s when I experienced them. First Aid Kit, these kinds of bands. Band of Horses. But really, nothing like what I experienced when I was 13, 14, 15. I would sit there and make posters of lyrics of bands that I liked.
Yeah.
I would sit there and listen to the music and just write out the lyrics. And I think I even still, or maybe I took a picture of them and throw them away because they were really big. They were like, 3 feet tall posters that I would make.
Yeah.
That would just be tiny little words. I would just sit there and listen to the music and write the lyrics. And but again, brain science is pretty
squishy.
Yeah, and rudimentary this period. But if we're going to talk about like brain elements, it seems as though in those moments, a lot of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and other neurochemicals that all make us feel good are released when we listen to things when they're at that age and that make us feel good. And the fact that I believe, this is my theory, that we don't have the brain is ready to accept those kinds of memories and associations. You could almost think of it, to me, evolutionary-wise, like 100,000 years ago, we're on the African savannah, and we turned 13, and in our tribe, we all really love to dance around the fire and sing this one particular song.
Yep.
And we're dancing, and we'd heard it when we were 8, but now that we're 13 and we're able to actually participate in the adult version of this art form.
It might even be our coming of age song.
Yeah.
Because it's our ceremony for marking our...
Yeah, exactly. And we hear it, and it just like, I'm getting chills just thinking about the Neanderthal in me, I suppose.
Those drums.
Yeah. And it would make sense that we would evolve a mechanism that would really lock that in, because of course that's the tradition of our tribe, that's the identity of our tribe, that's what brings our tribe together, that's what brings our cohort together.
Right.
Like, when you and I listen to music from our generation, it brings us together. If we didn't have those things in common, it'd be harder for us to be friends, really.
But they didn't have synthesizers back then.
Yeah. So that's a long way of putting that's the science.
Yeah, very fascinating. Well, to that point, we're going to do a quick top 5, both for radio and for MTV. So, like, this is the top 5 memories you have. It could be good or bad or whatever.
Oh.
So what's your number 5 radio?
Well, I've been talking for a while. You give me your top 5.
Okay, I'll do the top 5. Okay, my number 5 radio, you'll love this one, Kokomo. 1988.
Oh, God.
So when that song came out, I would sing it with my friend Maria Andrea in the bus non-stop.
God,
Aruba, Jamaica. Ooh, I want.
Okay, I don't need to repeat it. You must have been insufferable, man.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What's your number 5?
No, do
Oh,
your
you want me to? Okay. My number 4 is when I was listening to the radio and Smells Like Teen Spirit dethroned Michael for the number 1 that week. That was crazy. And then that's the first time I'm hearing this song. I wasn't into Nirvana. I wasn't into grunge. I wasn't into anything.
Yeah.
And this song blasts out of the radio. So it was both a literal and a metaphorical dethroning of all the pop that was out there.
Just chiming in, I didn't hear this song. I mean, I'd heard of Nirvana, of course, because of Seattle and being the college scene. And I knew them to be a shittier version of Mudhoney. And because they weren't very good. I mean, Bleach, it's okay, but and live they were pretty rough.
Yeah.
But Mudhoney was very polished, and so I always thought Mudhoney was going to be the band that was going to make it. But anyway, when Smells Like Teen Spirit came out, I remember hearing this song and thinking like, wow, that's actually a pretty good song, but it didn't really hit me until I was at a dance club in Seattle. It's called like the Seattle, I can't remember what it's called, but it was down by the Vogue on First Avenue.
And everyone started, jump.
Yeah. And everyone's dancing to Madonna or Michael Jackson or other kinds of regular dance hits, right? And then all of a sudden, the DJ just throws down Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I'm getting chills thinking about it. The entire club just went crazy. Like, it became a mosh pit.
Yeah.
Back then, we didn't call them mosh pits. We just called them, like...
Pits.
We just called them, like, I don't know,
Crazy dancing.
slam dance. Yeah. And it became... And because it was a preppy dance club.
Yeah.
It was the preppy dance club. Like, what would be a preppy dance club? Well, I suppose we wouldn't know in Seattle, but it was the top 40 kids. And Smells Like Teen Spirit comes on, and it turned everyone in the whole place into a punk slam dancer. And the dancing was primal and and animalistic. And I thought, awesome. and I felt the music at that time. I was like, wow, this song is really good.
Yeah.
And I thought, I bet you this song is going to be big.
Yeah.
Because of that reason.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was. All right. My number 3. I know it's cheesy, but Hold On for One More Day, Wilson Phillips, 1990. I was leaving Columbia. This was that summer right before I left. And
didn't you talk about this recently?
Yeah, I was in the car with my friend Juan Miguel. We were like saying goodbye. We're like talking about how sad it is. And that song came on. I was like, yeah, it's so cheesy.
Sing the chorus.
Someday somebody's gonna make you wanna turn around and say goodbye. Say goodbye to them, baby. Are you gonna let me turn around and say make you cry? Don't you know? Things will change. Things will go your way if you hold on for one more day. Things will go your way. Hold on for one more day. All right. And then, number 2, Every Breath You Take, 1983. So there were a few songs from the early 80s that I associated with my dad and with us kind of staying up late on a Friday. But this song, when it came out, it just... Because, the song, it's got this perfect little... Dun, 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 it like comes in, and it immediately gets you into a little world. And so the thing I associate with it is it's Friday night. I'm staying up late. My dad's like reading something and I'm drawing or I'm doing some sort of activity. And it's just, I can picture my room. I can hear the radio and I can just think to myself, wow, I love this song.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And my number one.
Yeah, I have a lot of songs like that you just said.
Yeah, where you have a memory.
These little scenes of being at home with my family.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then my number one, I've told this one before, is when I get to class and everyone is excitedly talking about a song. And I'm like, what song are you guys talking about? They're like, Love Song. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love Love Song. And we're like geeking out about it. And like, yeah, it's so good. I know. And I start saying like, it's just great because like the little melodies build on top of each other. And they're like, yeah. And then one of them says, but I love kind of like the acoustic-y intro. And I'm like, and then we quickly realize it's like a sitcom. We're both talking about two different songs. And I'm like, wait. Are you guys talking about Love Song by The Cure? They're like, no, Love Song by Tesla. And
by Tesla?
Tesla. Do you remember that song?
No.
So you say that it's over. It's like, it's the Tesla 5-man acoustical jam.
Yeah, I was way beyond that kind of.
All right. But they both were released August 1989.
Oh, that's funny.
And they were both called Love Song, except Love Song, The Cure, didn't have a space in between. I don't know. I'm hearing my favorite song at the time on the radio is Love Song by The Cure.
Yeah.
So it was I was the only kid in the group that knew the Cure one. And I had heard the Tesla one, and I did like it, but I just felt so left out. But I was okay. I was like, well, the other one's better.
I mean, I did like that one cover they did.
Signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun.
That was. I mean, it was pretty similar to the original.
So the Love song was pretty impressive. They start with like the little acoustic, I think a 12-string. Dun da 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 dun 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 da 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 da, and then it goes into this like whole thing, but nothing compared to Cure. So that was my thing, and then I also did one for my top 5 MTV moments.
Okay, well, we'll do that in a second.
Okay.
So for me, I'm adding a number 6 because you just reminded me, and I'll say it very quickly. More Than a Feeling by Boston.
Oh.
My brother would jam it on his record player, and I'm playing Legos. Whenever I hear More Than a Feeling by Boston, or even that whole album, which is a great album.
You're playing Legos.
I'm playing Legos in the basement, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But my number 5 is The Cure, In Between Days. I'm older than you, so like Love Song for me, it's like that's an okay song.
That's late Cure.
But that to me, that's getting into the Cure that
Sure.
I'm not so excited about. But In Between Days is one of my favorite albums and one of my favorite songs. And the memory I have of this song is listening to it at my friend's house, who lived kind of on the other side of the tracks downtown Issaquah. And we went to I think it was even an apartment, and his parents were at home, and I was sort of with the rough. I was friends with a lot of different cliques.
Yeah.
And this was kind of the rough clique.
Okay.
And they would all go on probably to become drug addicts of some kind. But this is before that, which is kind of interesting to think like that someone who would eventually become addicted to substances would exhibit proto-addict behavior, probably because their parents suffered from addiction. But anyway, we went to their house and his apartment, and they had this game that they liked to play where they would strangle themselves. And then you would bend over and you would strangle yourself and cut off the blood to your brain. And then you'd stand up really fast and
pass out.
You'd either pass out or you'd be really high for
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was akin to huffing gasoline or something. And I didn't do it. I almost did it, but I was like, I don't know if this sounds very smart. And but yeah, whenever I hear In Between Days by The Cure,
what you think.
my number 4 is Howard Jones' No One Is to Blame.
Oh yeah.
Great song. It always reminds me of driving out of Pine Lake Park on the plateau. Summer Day. Limelight by Rush always reminds me of sitting in the dark with Tommy. But it also reminds me of playing Rock Band because it's such a hard drum song to play, and I would practice that over and over again. My number 2 is Could You Be the One by Husker Du.
Oh, I don't remember
So
that.
before you probably wouldn't. Do you know any Husker Du song?
I don't know.
Probably not. Before there was Nirvana, there was Husker Du. Like
You've told me about him.
Yeah, Husker Du. When I first heard them, Could You Be the One, 1987, I think. I just thought it was this genius music because it took grungy, punky, metal music, but had melodies and had interesting lyrics. And so, because that was always the thing about metal that I didn't like was the singing, music could be okay. But anyway, so the memory I have of this song, I have many memories, but one specific is I'd bring my Walkman. It wasn't an actual Walkman. It was like a knockoff Walkman.
Okay.
And I'd be listening to that on a cassette, and I'd be walking in the halls of my high school in between classes, and it's this very angry song. And I, would just get so angry and anarchic when I would hear that song, and I knew no one else could hear it, but I'm looking through the lens of the song at my environment at the high school.
Oh my gosh.
And just judging everything around me.
Oh no.
Just like, oh, you're all just a bunch of robots. Just like, I want to burn this place to the ground.
Oh, great.
And my number 1 is Don't You Want Me by Human League.
Nice.
My memory of this, similar to the Jump story, was I'm hanging out with my friends. We're probably 10 or 11, summer afternoon, summer evening, and we're on our street, and there's girls and boys, and this girl and this boy in the group started singing this song, and they knew every single word. And they sang it from beginning to end,
wow.
Each taking turn with the boy and the girl.
Yeah.
And it was a spontaneous thing. It wasn't like they had planned it. The girl just started singing it, and then my friend Justin, he started singing it. And I just remember watching them marveling at the fact that this song was so great, and that they had memorized every word. And we were in this, it's just this magical little adolescent sun setting, the pine trees, parents are in the backyard cooking barbecue or something. Anyways, so those are my memories.
That's awesome.
All right, MTV video.
Okay, MTV. So my top 5, these are memories. So it's not necessarily my favorite videos of all time. It's my favorite memories, or my most prominent memories.
Right, that was your question, was memories, because if picking favorite
videos, it's different.
Videos, that's harder. Yeah.
Okay, my number 5, Money for Nothing, 1985, Dire Straits. As many people, when I saw this video, first of all, it had computer animation, and it was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek video because it was poking fun at the same thing it was doing. And I liked the song. It had Sting singing in the background. It was just great. And so I remember that video just being like, I watched it. I specifically remember at 80's, at my grandma's, on her TV, and I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing I've seen. Yeah. And I remember being there. And I think my grandpa might have been there. And it's funny because so much older, but I remember him kind of enjoying it too.
Okay.
All right. My number 4. Now we get a little dark here. One by Metallica. Oh my God. When this video came out, I was disturbed, but in a very interested way. Because, the video is all these scenes.
Right. So if you don't know, this video has a bunch of clips from a movie from the 60s where this guy, a war veteran, is injured in that all of his limbs have been blown off. He can't see, he can't hear, he can't talk. And
he's locked in.
Yeah. And so there's that whole kind of scene. We see that develop. And then eventually he starts to do Morse code to communicate. And a fellow soldier is standing by his bedside, and to his horror, he realized that kill me, he's saying.
It's horrible. But I never seen the movie. All I knew is what is this? So I'm watching this video. The song is great. The lyrics are like depressing, and the video is mesmerizing.
Yeah.
So I remember that, and I remember seeing it and thinking that it was it's sort of like I had never seen anything like it before. I distinctly remember, like, in my life I've never seen something like this, and it's true because I didn't really used to watch at that age. I hadn't really watched many horror movies or nothing experimental. Everything I'd watched was mostly very pop. And this was like weird and different, you know? Yeah. Okay, my number 3, speaking of not different, Sober by Tool.
I was going to say, 'cause similar kind of thing. It's funny how just a few years will be so different, you know? Because like you were 15, I'm guessing, when that song came out-ish.
One?
Yeah.
Well, when it came out, yeah, maybe. You might be
or
right.
14, 13.
No, yeah, 15 is probably right.
Yeah, because it's just interesting because those songs, although were, you know, big videos, I never would have picked those because I was like 18, 19 and was like, yeah, those are fine, but it's not like it used to be.
Right. Well, Sober, when it came out, I remember it was 1993, I think. It was the weirdest video.
Yeah.
A claymation, and this creature is like it's a super disturbing.
Yeah, it's like a poo or a meat thing or something.
Yeah, it's very, and it's definitely.
That's a great song.
A very cool song. That was the other thing, is I hadn't heard Tool before that, and I was just mesmerized by the music. So I remember watching it. I had just gotten to college, I believe, and so it was in the tiny little TV that I shared with Shun. And I remember being in the dorm room just watching this, but being like, what am I watching? And it was, again, another little insight into there's more to the world than the pop veneer that I'd been enjoying. And I think that after that is when I started digging movies that were like odd and scary and different, you know? Okay, now number 2, Thriller. I think a lot of people probably have memories of when Thriller came out. When Thriller came out, it was like watching a whole movie.
Yeah.
It was a movie event. It was presented as like a small movie event on TV.
Oh, yeah. We talked about this before. My family was at some kind of silent auction or some kind of event, maybe for our church or something. And I remember saying, we got to get home because Thriller is going to be on TV tonight at 7 o'clock or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like
it was a big event even in Colombia.
Yeah.
And so it premieres, and it's a whole little horror movie with a werewolf, and then the song starts, and the song, of course, is fantastic, super infectious. The video, you've never seen a zombie movie video, and Michael's dancing is on point as always, and then it's got the twist ending, and the song just stays in your head, and you want to immediately see it again. So I was watching it there at not at Liti's house, at my other grandma's house, which is where I lived. Upstairs, my grandma, my grandpa, my dad, all of us are and her sister, Chana, we're all gathered by the TV upstairs. And of course, I think the older folk are sort of saying things like, wow, that's very nice dancing, but I don't quite understand, you know, like stuff like that. And me and my dad actually really was, I think, appreciating it. But I was just like, wow. And the next day, all we could do at school was talk about it.
Yeah, it's so weird. Again, that open slot, right?
Yeah.
The older people were looking at the same thing, but to them it was like, okay.
That's interesting dancing.
Yeah, it's interesting. But for our generation, we were like, this is the best thing that's ever been made.
Never been, yeah.
Yeah.
And number 1, this is going to seem like anticlimactic, but it's very specific. So the video is Parents Just Don't Understand by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. First of all, the context. I am visiting my brother. It's the summer. I'm visiting here from Colombia before I had fully moved here.
Was it like 88?
Yeah, 88, I think. So I'm like 12 or 13 or something.
Yeah.
And this video comes on, and the video is super fun, and it speaks to me because, you know, parents don't just understand, you know. and I wasn't really too much into rap, but I'm really enjoying this DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince thing. The video's funny, and my brother and I are just like totally into it. Well, then him and I have a debate and make a bet. because when the video was no longer playing, I mean, it was still on rotation, but it was like we were watching some show. We were trying to sing it, and I at one point say a lyric, and he says, that's not what they say. And the lyric I say is, later in the song, there's a point where they're driving him home after he was arrested, and he says, I think he says, I want to play in my case. And my brother's like, that's not what he says. I'm like, yeah, that's what he says. I was like, what does that even mean? Well, like, they're taking him home, and like his case is like his crib. He's like, his crib? What do you mean his crib? Like his little baby crib. He's not a baby. Well, I know, but he's acting like a baby. Well, but that's still not a case. And this is my 4-year younger brother.
And you guys argue all the time.
And I'm telling him, but bro, that's what he says. And it makes sense because he's like reverting to childhood.
It's plead his case, right?
Well, that's what he said. That's what my brother's saying. I think it's like plead. I want to plead my case, which I'm not sure what it means, but I think that's what he's saying. And I'm like, that's nothing. That doesn't mean anything. And I convinced my brother to make a bet. So we make a bet. And at the time we bet Betties, which were nothing, but we bet like 1,000 Betties.
What do you mean? What's a Betty?
It was just our made up fictional currency.
Did you keep track?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you find out the lyrics?
Well, the next time it played, we paid really close attention. And guess what? When that moment comes, he goes, see? And I'm like, nope. He says, I want to play in my case.
Yeah.
It didn't convince me.
Big brother veto.
Oh, God. But it's funny. A fond memory, and we always joke about it.
Along those lines, I've told this story before too. My cousin, not my little cousin, my cousin who's my age, Brian, you've met him, I think, thought it was another one, Bites the Doctor.
Yeah, we talked about that.
So, top 5 favorite MTV videos with memories. Number 5 is Gypsy by Fleetwood Mac.
Nice song.
So Brian, my cousin, had cable in Renton, and so I would always watch MTV at his house. In fact, he would bring, which I'll talk about later. But I love the song Gypsy. I loved it when I was 11 or 12, whenever that song came out, and the video is just perfect. You know, Stevie Nicks in all of her flowing lace and everything. It was just like this perfect visual version of that song, and I have a lot of fond memories watching that when I was young. Number 4 is Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
Oh, yeah. So good.
I was in the 6th grade, I believe, and I'm watching this video, and he's wearing an Izod, a pink Izod shirt with it buttoned all the way up to the top. And I just thought, I want to be that. I want to be. So I started buttoning my Izod shirts all the way up to the top. And no one else was doing that in my school. You know, like I was always one of those people that, not always, but when I was that age, I don't know why, but I think it was because I was half Japanese, to be honest. The fact that I stuck out because it was an all-white community. Sure. And felt like, and I think my brother influenced me as well, because he was more of a joke dresser. Like he liked to dress in like jokey things. And anyway, so I have a lot of memories of that video of the lead singer having his eyes on button all the way up to the top. Number 3 is Driver 8 by REM. So this is like 86 REM. And I have the album actually right behind me, Fables of the Reconstruction. And I'd never heard of REM before, because they were college radio, and they didn't play college radio on MTV. And we didn't have any college radio station in Seattle back then. The End didn't come around until 91, I think. And when the End came out, I was like, oh my God, we have an alternative radio station for us. And I remember we sat there and like we just sat around the radio and listened to it. But anyway, Driver 8 comes on MTV late at night. That's when they would play like the weird stuff.
Right.
And I'm watching this video and I'm like, what am I hearing? This music is so different and so good. And I ran out and got that album, and you know, just it really changed. It opened up, similar to what you were saying. It just opens up your mind to like, wait, music can sound like that?
Yeah.
Number 2, same as you, Michael Jackson, but a different song, Billie Jean.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that video is arguably better, but it's just so interesting, you know?
Yeah, I've watched that video. I watched that video and have as an adult so many times.
Yeah.
The when he walks on the street and it lights up, I just remember it's captive. It's electric.
And you know how much choreography goes into that, because there's no like, just walk on this green screen. We'll add the effects.
Yeah. Well, there weren't green screen back. He didn't use any green screen.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That it's all actually they had to time all those lights.
Right.
He had to do all the things.
The background is painted on and right. So that video, I have a lot of memories of. My number one is Karma Chameleon by Culture Club.
Oh, yes.
Not because it's such a great song. It's a great song. But the reason why I mention it is because my cousin Brian would record MTV on his VHS recorder and bring it over to my house. And we would just sit there and watch the VHS of MTV.
The recorded, yeah.
And I remember he put on this song, Karma Chameleon, Boy George, and he's saying, that's a guy.
Oh, right.
He's like, that's a guy singer. And I was like, similar to you with your brother. I'm like, no, that's impossible.
Air Supply's lead singer is a woman. Come on.
Yeah. I just remember just being completely sure that was not a dude. There's just no possible way. And, but just the, like this cultural ambassador shows up with this golden VHS tape, and I just want to watch it and watch it and watch it because we don't have cable,
right?
And no one in my neighborhood had cable because that was the whole thing. It hadn't come to my neighborhood yet.
Man, Boy George, talk about being ahead of his time.
Yeah,
and then becoming an amazing DJ and all these things. By the way, I do have an amazing memory of Karma Chameleon, which is. We used to play marbles out in the yard at school, as most kids did.
How quaint.
And I remember so distinctly, I can see it, walking out of the classroom as recess starts, heading to the marble thing with my little pack of marbles, singing Karma Chameleon, because I was so into that song. So I'm walking over, Karma, 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 Karma Chameleon. And of course I would lose my marbles, but still, I have it just like that picture. And I was probably... that was like 82.
Yeah, something.
I was like 7 years old.
Yeah.
But it's embedded in my brain.
All right, Berto, thanks for doing a Bert topic.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Let us know what you think in the comments below or email in by going to our website, clicking on the contact. And everyone out there, enjoy yourself and try to listen to non-plastic music because
you deserve it.